Investigators believe that Herb Baumeister targeted gay men, killing at least 25 people in the 1990s. It was in 1996 that police found 10,000 bone fragments in the woods that surrounded his property, the Fox Hollow Farm.
$1 million mansion, a respected businessman, and a secret so horrifying, it still haunts Indiana to this day. Between the late 1980s and mid-1990s, the city of Indianapolis was haunted by the mysterious disappearances of gay men. Their last known nights always ended the same way, at a bar, with a mysterious man who called himself Brian Smart. But that man wasn't who he said he was. His real name was Herb Baumeister. Husband, father, successful entrepreneur, and one of America's most chilling serial killers. In the early 90s, men across Indianapolis began vanishing after being invited to his luxurious estate, Fox Hollow Farm. Inside, a pool lined with mannequins set the eerie stage for what would become a real-life horror story. When police finally searched the property, they discovered more than 10,000 bone fragments, human teeth, and evidence of unspeakable acts that shocked even the most seasoned investigators. This is the story of the Fox Hollow Farm murders. And in this video, I'll delve into how one man turned his $1 million mansion into a house of unimaginable terror. Herbert Richard Baumeister was born on April 7, 1947, in Indianapolis, Indiana. He was the eldest of 4 children, raised in what many would consider a typical middle-class American family. His father, Dr. Herbert Baumeister Sr., was a respected anesthesiologist, and his mother, Elizabeth, was a homemaker. But Herb wasn't like other kids. From an early age, he displayed bizarre and disturbing behavior. He was fascinated with death and decay. As a young boy, he reportedly played with dead animals, dissected them, and even developed a morbid fascination with the taste of urine. In one shocking incident, Herb urinated on a teacher's desk, unprovoked, an early red flag that his mind was far from stable. As he entered adolescence, his behavior became increasingly erratic and antisocial. Concerned, his parents had him evaluated by psychiatrists who diagnosed him with schizophrenia and antisocial personality disorder. Though he received some treatment, it didn't seem to help much. Herb managed to graduate high school in 1965, but barely. After graduation, Herb briefly attended Indiana University, but dropped out before finishing his degree. Despite his growing instability, he tried to live a normal life. In 1971, he met Juliana "Julie" Sider, a journalism student. They connected over shared conservative values and dreams of entrepreneurship. After a short courtship, they married in 1971. But even early on, things weren't right. Just 6 months after their wedding, Herb was hospitalized for severe depression. Julie stood by him, but his erratic behavior only worsened with time. He bounced between jobs, most notably working for the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, BMV, where co-workers described him as strange, unpredictable, and obsessive. One incident stood out. Herb reportedly urinated on his boss's desk after a disagreement. He was promptly fired. It was around this time that he began secretly visiting gay bars in Indianapolis. His marriage became increasingly strained, and Julie later revealed that they were intimate only a handful of times in their entire 25-year marriage. In the 1980s, Herb tried to reinvent himself as an entrepreneur. Alongside Julie, he opened a successful thrift store chain called Save a Lot. The business took off, and soon they were wealthy enough to purchase their dream home, Fox Hollow Farm, a $1 million 18-acre property in the upscale suburb of Westfield, Indiana. But behind the gates of Fox Hollow, darkness thrived. The Baumeisters' marriage continued to deteriorate, especially after their second store failed. Herb became short-tempered, controlling, and increasingly withdrawn. At night, he led a secret life. In gay bars across Indianapolis, he introduced himself as Brian Smart. He was charming, confident, and he knew exactly how to pick his victims. Around 1993, gay men in the Indianapolis area began disappearing. They were last seen at bars like the Varsity Lounge and the 501 Club. Police believe the same killer could be behind a string of similar murders along Interstate 70, the so-called I-70 Strangler. Between 1980 and 1991, at least a dozen young men were found strangled and dumped along Interstate 70, their bodies left in ditches or riverbanks stretching from Indiana to Ohio. The victims were often gay or closeted men, picked up from bars or known cruising areas.
The body was laying back in that area.
The body of 42-year-old Otto Becker was spotted Wednesday by a Henry County farmer. Becker hadn't been dead long.
And we believe right now that the body was brought here. It appeared like it had been drugged from the edge of the road up to where it was resting at.
There are similarities to a series of gay murders in the Midwest stretching back 10 years. Becker had been strangled, a cord still wrapped around his neck. The other victims were either strangled or stabbed. Like other victims, he was from Indianapolis, and his body was dumped in a rural area not far from Interstate 70. Police say there may be a connection.
We can't rule that out at this point, but we're investigating all angles of it.
When the murders around Indianapolis suddenly stopped in 1991, the same time Herb's business began to take off, and new disappearances started just a few years later, investigators suspected the same killer had simply found a new place to hide his crimes. The pattern was eerily consistent. Young, fit gay men, last seen with a mysterious man. Because of the similarities in victims, method, and timing, many believed Herb could have been the I-70 Strangler, but it was never proven. To this day, there's no solid evidence linking him to those earlier murders, only haunting parallels suggesting his spree may have begun long before Fox Hollow Farm. Herb's method was chilling. He would lure men back to his mansion under the guise of an after-party at his luxurious indoor pool. Inside, eerie mannequins lined the pool area, posed like silent guests at a never-ending cocktail party. Once alone, Herb suggested a dangerous game involving controlled asphyxiation, strangling each victim with a pool hose or belt until they died. He chose the pool because the echoes of the water masked their screams. Afterward, he dragged their bodies outside and burned or buried their remains in shallow graves around the property. Sometimes he kept bones or teeth as twisted trophies. His wife and kids were often away at their lake house during the weekends. The same weekends Herb went hunting. At least 11 young men vanished, including Roger Goodlett, Alan Broussard, Johnny Byer, Richard Hamilton, Stephen Hale, Manny Resendez, Jeff Jones, and Alan Livingston. Most were in their 20s or 30s. Many were last seen leaving gay bars, but their remains wouldn't be found for years. The LGBTQ+ community in Indianapolis had long criticized police for their slow response to the missing men, suspecting bias. But the case took a turn when a man named Mark Goodyear came forward, though at the time he was known publicly only by the pseudonym Tony Harris to protect his identity. Mark was a friend of Roger Goodlett, one of the many young men who had gone missing around Indianapolis. Like so many in the city's gay community, he was frustrated that police didn't seem to be doing enough, so he decided to look for answers himself. One night, while at a local gay bar, Mark noticed a man staring intently at Roger's missing poster on the wall. The man's expression wasn't one of sadness or concern. It was something darker. When their eyes met, Mark said the man's demeanor and intensity sent a chill down his spine. That man introduced himself as Brian Smart. They talked for a while, and Brian came off as charming, articulate, and a little strange. Eventually, he invited Mark to come back to his place for a drink, a mansion just outside the city, where he claimed he was staying while working a landscaping job. Inside, the home was immaculate and eerie. Mark would later describe how the indoor pool was surrounded by life-sized mannequins as well behind the bar, posed like they were frozen mid-conversation at a cocktail party. Brian poured Mark a drink, but Mark, uneasy, dumped it out and replaced it with water when Brian wasn't looking. Soon after, Brian picked up a pool hose, looped it around Mark's neck, and suggested they try a dangerous choking game, something he claimed would heighten the experience. Mark reluctantly played along but grew suspicious when Brian's intensity and fixation on strangling him became alarming. Realizing he was in serious danger, Mark managed to get Brian to stop and convince him to drive him back to the city. The next day, Mark went to the police, describing the house, the mannequins, and the choking scene in detail. Unfortunately, detectives couldn't locate the man or identify where the property was, because Herb was living under an alias and the description was too vague. But months later, fate intervened. Mark saw Brian again at another gay bar. This time, he wrote down the license plate number, which led police straight to Herb Baumeister and his property, Fox Hollow Farm. Detectives from the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office and Indianapolis Police began looking into Herb discreetly. They realized he matched the description connected to multiple missing men from Indianapolis's gay community. They first tried to question Herb politely, hoping to get access to his property. When they approached him at his business, Save-A-Lot thrift stores, Herb came off as odd but cooperative, until they mentioned they were investigating missing persons. At that point, Herb became defensive, refused to let them search his property, and insisted they contact his lawyer. Since Herb had refused access, investigators went to his wife, Julie Baumeister. At first, she was shocked and didn't believe them. She declined their request to search the premises as well until she remembered something horrifying. Back in 1994, her son had found a human skull in their yard. Herb told Julie that the skull, and any other bones that might be around, were old medical anatomy specimens from his father's work as a doctor, and she believed him. Now it all made sense. As Herb's behavior grew increasingly unstable, paranoid, volatile, and unpredictable, his marriage to Julie Baumeister began to collapse. One day in early 1996, during a tense separation period, Herb left the house with their 13-year-old son to the family's lake house at Lake Wawasee. Julie was terrified. When police contacted her again about searching the property, she realized that her husband's erratic actions and the strange discoveries she'd seen on their land could no longer be ignored. Julie saw an opportunity. She told police that if they helped safely return her son, she would grant full permission to search Fox Hollow Farm. Once their son was back safely with her, Julie allowed investigators to proceed without Herb's approval. That single decision finally opened the door to uncovering what was buried on the Baumeisters' estate. In June 1996, investigators began their search of Fox Hollow Farm. Almost immediately, they discovered charred bone fragments and human remains scattered around the wooded area behind the house and in a drainage ditch. As they sifted through the soil, they uncovered a particularly chilling find: a human bone with a pair of rusted handcuffs still attached. That detail strongly suggested the victims hadn't just been killed, but had been restrained and tortured. Over time, police and forensic teams recovered thousands of bone fragments and teeth, belonging to at least 11 men, possibly many more. The remains were so badly burned and crushed that most victims could only be identified through DNA or dental records, and even then, only a few were conclusively matched. When Herb learned about the search, he fled to Ontario, Canada. At one point, a Canadian police officer pulled him over for erratic driving. That officer later claimed to have seen what looked like videotapes or camera equipment in Herb's car. But when the car was later found, those items had vanished. A few weeks later, campers discovered his body inside his car at Pinery Provincial Park. He had died by suicide from a self-inflicted wound. In his final note, Herb apologized for messing up the scenery of the park and for failing his marriage and business. However, he made no mention of the murders, the bones, or the investigation, leaving no confession and no answers for the victims' families. When authorities found his body, they confirmed his identity and closed the manhunt. After Herb Baumeister's death in 1996, law enforcement largely closed the case, assuming the killer had taken all his secrets to the grave. But the victims' families and members of the local community refused to let it fade away. Decades later, renewed attention and advances in forensic technology brought new hope. One of the most instrumental figures in this effort has been Jeff Jellison, the Hamilton County coroner. Jellison worked alongside forensic experts and the University of Indianapolis Human Identification Center to re-examine the thousands of bone fragments that had been stored since the 1990s. His efforts, which combined modern DNA testing and careful documentation, have directly led to the identification of several victims in recent years. Through his work, names have been restored to some of the men once listed as John Does, giving long-awaited closure to families who had waited nearly 3 decades. Jellison's dedication also reignited public awareness of the case, ensuring that the tragedy of Fox Hollow Farm and the lives of the men who were lost there would not be forgotten. Even decades after Herb Baumeister's death and the discovery of human remains at Fox Hollow Farm, many investigators and true crime researchers have continued to wonder if he acted entirely alone. The sheer number of remains and thousands of bone fragments led some to believe that one man, even as methodical as Herb, might not have been able to dispose of so many bodies by himself. The cleanup, burning, and crushing of bones over several years would have been physically and logistically demanding. In Hulu's 2025 Fox Hollow Farm documentary, Mark Goodyear, previously known only as Tony Harris, came forward, revealing his real name and face for the first time. In the film, Mark admitted that he had lied to police when he originally claimed Herb physically attacked him. He said he only made that allegation to give investigators a reason to take the disappearances seriously and push them to open a case. Mark also revealed that his relationship with Herb had been closer than he first admitted. He spent time at Fox Hollow Farm socially, knew Herb well, and was not just a one-time acquaintance. During the documentary, Mark was confronted with a statement from Leroy, an alleged survivor of Herb, who claimed Mark was present when Herb shot someone. Mark denied the accusation, insisting he was not at Fox Hollow Farm that day and had never witnessed Herb kill anyone. But the documentary also resurfaced something chilling. Before taking his own life, Herb contacted his lawyer, saying he was completely freaked out about Mark, calling him a bad dude, and claiming he feared Mark could come after his family. Herb also told his lawyer he had left a note for Julie hidden behind a painting, and that there was information related to Mark in lockers at his Save-A-Lot stores. According to reports, this information was given to police after Herb's death. But there is no record that the lockers or claims were ever investigated. Whether Herb was trying to protect his family or trying to shift suspicion onto the one man who could expose him remains unclear. However, many viewers found Mark's behavior in the documentary deeply unsettling. At times, he spoke in riddles, saying, "I was never attacked. I am not a murderer. Exactly what am I? Not an accomplice, not a victim, never attacked. What am I?" He contradicted himself repeatedly. And when asked if he knew whether Herb shot himself or was shot, this was Mark's response.
Did he kill himself? We'll save that for another damn show. How about that? I'm not trying to do 25, okay? Yes. I can tell you at the end of his life, his fingers were as round and swollen as sausages. There's no way he could have pulled that trigger.
The comment stunned viewers. It suggested that what Mark knows may go far beyond what he has ever admitted. Many online researchers, viewers, and even some detectives have questioned whether Mark may have been more involved than he claimed, perhaps even an accomplice. However, no evidence has ever been found to prove Mark Goodyear had any role in the murders. No charges were ever filed against him, and the case remains officially unproven on that point. Yet Mark's testimony, truthful, altered, or incomplete, remains the turning point that exposed Herb Baumeister and brought Fox Hollow Farm into the light. Forensic teams worked for years to identify victims through DNA, and even decades later, new bone fragments continue to surface at Fox Hollow Farm. The case remains open, with several victims still unidentified. Today, Fox Hollow Farm stands as one of America's most haunted locations. The mansion is currently owned by Rob and Vicki Graves, who made the unusual decision to live on the property full-time, despite knowing what happened there. Rob has spoken openly about continuing to swim in the same indoor pool where many of Herb's victims were strangled, surrounded by the echoing tile, dim lighting, and silence where the attacks took place. Rather than closing the property off from the world, Rob and Vicki have embraced its notoriety. They occasionally host guided tours, allow paranormal investigation groups to explore, and have welcomed documentary crews and ghost hunters seeking to understand what lingers there.
We were going to try to put all this behind us, but you can't get away from it. It's always that place.
Visitors and paranormal investigators have reported footsteps, whispering voices, cold spots, and even apparitions of men near the pool area. The case was featured in episodes of Paranormal Witness and Ghost Adventures, where investigators claimed to capture chilling evidence of unrested spirits, perhaps the victims of Herb Baumeister, still trapped where their lives ended. A successful businessman, a devoted father, a respected neighbor, and yet, beneath the surface, a monster hiding in plain sight. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you believe Herb Baumeister acted alone, or do you think he had help? And if so, do you believe Mark Goodyear was an accomplice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, hype, and subscribe for more LGBTQ true crime.